Good afternoon. This is Courtney Neubauer with the Division of Nutrition Support. This is the monthly call for August. Today is August the 2nd. I see that we have a lower turnout than normal. So my guess is that many of you are getting ready for school. It's probably starting next week or even later this week. Or maybe on vacation, or you're just trying to get through the rainy weather that most of us are having today. We have a good bit to cover. A lot of it is a repeat, but as we start into this next school year, I want to make sure that everybody's starting off on the right foot. So we'll go over our online application, the reimbursement rates for school year 22-23, a little bit about PEBT and the local level funding that's coming, our possible COVID-specific waivers, additional flexibilities that are available for 22-23, the transitional standards, which have gone into effective July 1. So many of us, as we are starting school, will be using those standards, eScholar updates and CEP manager, and then training updates, and then just other reminders of what's to come. So to start, our online application for school year 22-23, this is for National School Lunch, School Breakfast. They are open. The deadline for submission is Friday, August 19th. And there are 7 forms that need to be submitted. It's the waivers. The waivers that are available under the online application are those COVID-specific waivers. So I don't expect that many of you will need those at the start of school, but should that be something that is that is needed, they are there if you need to select those. The other forms, the policy checklist, Schedule A, collection procedures, collection officials, labor expenses, and income and expense. These are the forms that are required every year. I know the last couple of years we've done summer and then seamless summer, but back to traditional national school lunch with school lunch rules as we move into school year 22-23. 2 things to note. The first is on the income and expense form. There is a separate line item that has been added to record the income from Sca Funds. So on the income and expense at the top section, on income, right below the federal reimbursement, which is the information that you get from your claims. The second place that's listed right there is the Sca Funds, and those are the funds that you have already received last school year. So I know there's potentially some more funds coming, but we have not shared those allocations with you just yet. So that amount that you're trying to include is what you've already received last year. The labor income doesn't always import correctly. We are going through some changes within the department on how school systems are reporting labor, moving from it being in the Pebt system to it being in the EdLink 360 system. So when you go to import your labor and it doesn't work and it just brings in zeros, you can make any adjustments that you need to on the income and expense form. This is kind of a transitional year with those systems on a state level. So if we're kind of just making do with making those manual adjustments on the income and expense statement, if they are not available on, they don't come in through the labor expense page. The reimbursement rates for school year 22-23, these have been released. I know these were we've been waiting for these reimbursement rates to come out. We get a lot of questions as to which rates we are to be using. So this first one is the National School Lunch. We have the 60% or less plus the 80 cents. So if you are one of those districts that on a system basis, you have less than 60% free and reduced from the second preceding year, then you fall into that 60% or less group. And then if you have 60% or more, then you're in the 60% or greater group. Everybody in our state is already that that 6 cent certification that we call it, that has gone to 7 cents, and we're now at 8 cents. Everybody is 6 cent certified is what we call it. So you will either be in that second column, the less than 60% plus 8 cents, or the fourth column, which is the 60% or more plus 8 cents. So those are the only two sections that you potentially would need. So you'll need one or the other. All this other information on this page, we don't live in Alaska or Guam, so we will not need those sections. So this is the lunch rate. This rate does include that additional money that was included in the Keep Kids Fed Act. So that additional 40 cents that we were expecting is already included in this amount. So this is the total. There is nothing else you need to add. This is what you're going to receive in reimbursement, and it's going to be either that second column or the fourth column. These are the school breakfast rates for next year. Same thing. Here, it's severe need is done on a site level. So there may be some sites that are severe need and others that are not. And so that is at 40% or greater, free and reduced in the second preceding year. And that all this like calculation on how we determine qualifications is done within the system. So you do not need to calculate anything. But just so you have an idea of where this, how you qualify for one versus the other. Same thing here. We have the two different columns and then the rates. This does include that additional breakfast reimbursement. So this is the total here. After school snacks, the rates are listed here. There's a decent increase here, but not nearly as much as we've seen with breakfast and lunch, because that bill really focused on increasing the reimbursement for those two meals in particular. So pandemic EBT and local level funding. So this is I'd say last week, I guess we got kind of real busy with the PEBT. So the summer PEBT plan was approved, and students in K-12 schools are eligible if they received free and reduced price meals and were in school in May of 2022. The eligible children will receive a total of $391, and that will cover June and July. The first payment is $195, and the second payment will be $196. So benefits are issued the first group of benefits that were issued are the ones that already had cards that received benefits at the end of the school year. The percentage of children that received benefits for PEBT this school year was much smaller than the ones in previous years. So the majority of our families who do qualify for PEBT will be receiving it a little bit later. So they were not in this first batch that received it. So you may be getting some calls of families saying that their friend got it, but maybe they haven't. Patience, making sure that your SIS coordinator gets that information in to DCFS as soon as possible, so that payments can be made. But that first round of payment was very, very small number of children, and it was based on who had already received benefits at the end of last school year. Benefits will be issued on the same cards, so make sure that your families are holding onto their cards. Because they are just going to load them on the exact same card that they've been using. So the eligibility requirements, they had to attend school at least one day in May. So that's how they guarantee that they were enrolled in the school system at the end of the school year. If they attended school and they participate in a CEP, if they're in a CEP school, then everybody in the school will qualify for summer PEBT. If they are not a CEP school, then the family itself would have had to qualify for free or reduced price meals through either direct certification or a free and reduced meal application. So students who have graduated, but they were enrolled and in school in May of 2020, during 2021, are included. And then students who are eligible for free and reduced price meals under the National School Lunch in last school year and attended a CEP school are also eligible. Children who are determined newly eligible for free or reduced price meals would be anybody who submitted an application for processing with child nutrition before Friday, July 29th, which was last week, which is why you probably saw an uptick in applications from families potentially being eligible for PEBT. So that deadline has passed. So all of the data used for summer 2022 PEBT should already be in your school system. Meal applications. This is just a reminder that that deadline was July 29th. So this is the deadline for families to submit meal applications to qualify for summer PEBT if they didn't already qualify based on data throughout the school year. There have been some questions about whether or not there was an application for PEBT itself. There is not. So the application that families may have been looking for was the meal application to qualify for PEBT. There is not a separate application to qualify for PEBT that families are to submit. The summer file is due through the PEBT admin portal, and it is to be submitted no later than August 31st. And that is kind of right around the corner. We're already on August 2nd. I know that the timeline, is kind of tight. It also is at a rough time with the start of school and a lot of rolling over of data from last year into this year. But the sooner you can get this in, or the sooner your SIS coordinator can get this in, the sooner the families will receive benefits, and hopefully that will help decrease some of the calls that you may be receiving from these families. So it's just a little bit of how, if you are responsible for filling out the submission, it's in the portal, but this is just kind of for your own reference. If you are those people that qualify for PEBT. I have a question about explaining the summer DC list and newly PEBT students. So the first file of this next school year that we received they would have to have qualified somewhere between the beginning of this past school year through July 29th. So if they are newly eligible based on a DC file in that period of time, they would also be considered a newly eligible child for PEBT. So they would have to be eligible for free or reduced price benefits, enrolled in May, and they would have to qualify for free and reduced price benefits either by application or DC from the start of the school year all the way through July 29th. So there is the potential that that first file that is released in July, which is used for this next school year, just as these applications that are being processed right now would be for this current school year, there is a potential that there are newly eligible children who were enrolled last year who now receive SNAP benefits who would now qualify for summer PEBT. Hope that answers the question. It wasn't more confusing. The number one question we get from families is about PEBT fund expungement. I would say 99% of the families that find me to ask questions about PEBT, it's regarding the funds being removed from the card. So all federal benefits, including PEBT, have a 9-month time limit, and the timer is reset to 9 months each time that a purchase is made. So if families didn't realize that they got a card, they lost the card, they misplaced the card, whatever the case may be, if they did not spend any of that money and that 9-month clock runs out, the funds will be expunged from their card. And there is no way to put the funds back on. Make sure families are aware of that. The number of emails and phone calls I've received about the funds being removed and concerned that someone stole it or that it was, improperly removed. There's been a lot. So just know that this is why they're having those funds removed from those cards. The frequently asked questions are on the DCFS website. I strongly encourage you to use them. The majority of the information that I use in this presentation for this section and for answering questions from families come from the frequently asked questions. So very seldom do I have an answer that is outside of what's already here in this resource. So I encourage you to use that as well. The PEBT office hours are Tuesdays at 10 a.m. With the beginning of summer PEBT, that we would expect that there will be more questions regarding PEBT, and so that the office hours are probably going to be much more popular now. The last few months it was not very popular because there wasn't really anything going on with PEBT. So the local level funding for PEBT. So if you remember correctly, last school year, we had some local level funding that went to schools. It was a set amount that was based on the eligible free and reduced children within a school system. We are using that same criteria this year. We have not received the funds just yet, but we are expecting to receive them very soon. So we will be distributing those once the funds are received. I have another question about when PEBT will end, since we're kind of coming to the end of the pandemic. You're probably not going to like my answer, but the public health emergency has been extended through October by the federal government, and as long as the public health emergency is in effect, so they are authorized for PEBT. So at this point, I expect to see PEBT for the first part of school year 22-23, at least through October. If something changes and that public health emergency is extended, I think we could see it through the entire 22-23 school year and potentially even into summer 2023. So I wish I could say that this is it, but it's not. Just make plans as we move into this next school year to continue capturing those absences related to COVID, as it is going to be necessary for sure through October, but potentially even longer. So the possible COVID specific waivers. So this is, these are waivers that we did apply for. They're not nationwide waivers. So the nationwide waivers for school year 22-23 are no more. There's a few, very, very particular waivers related to the school year. Specifically, there is a waiver to waive, fiscal action penalty for meal pattern issues related to supply chain. But overall, the nationwide waivers that we've seen for the last 2 years will not exist in school year 22-23. What we do have is these very, very specific waivers that we've applied for that are not meant to be used in the same way that the nationwide waivers for you. So these are meant to be waivers that are really a safety net. So they are something to catch us if we start seeing that the pandemic is not improving as we think it is, and we start to slip back to where there's higher instances of cases, maybe higher hospitalizations, and then from there, potentially school closures or changes in school operation. I would like to think that we'll never see that again, but I think we all thought last year that we weren't going to see it, and we saw an uptick in cases right as school started. So the waivers that are COVID specific, specifically the non-congregate meal service, parent guardian pickup, meal service time, offer versus serve. These are going to be approved for a very small period of time, and it is just meant to get you through the emergency related to a COVID outbreak. It is not meant to be used freely like it has been for this entire school year. So the approval will be based on very specific criteria. And these are strictly to be used as a safety net if we do not see that we're heading in the right direction with COVID cases and that we need to have something to fall back on. This allowed us to not panic. So if the situation does arise, we're not panicking to try to find a solution. We have the available resources and we're just going to keep them in our back pocket until we potentially need them, with the hope of not needing them at all this school year. So specifically for National School Lunch, the waivers that are available in this group of waivers is the non-congregate meal service, parent guardian pickup, meal service time, and offer versus serve. These are technically available through the end of the pandemic, but it is only for situations when congregate meal service is limited because of a COVID outbreak. We also have waivers that are specific to fresh fruit and vegetable, and these allow for parent guardian pickup. And if there is the potential of a site closing due to COVID, another site being able to serve the fresh fruit and vegetable food. So this is really something that we would only see if there was true closures in schools related to COVID. We also have waivers that support unanticipated school closures. Unanticipated school closures for us often means that we have that are related to hurricanes. So we often see that with hurricanes, we have a disruption in school service and sometimes need to fall back to some of these other flexibilities during those periods of not having school, even though school has technically restarted. So these waivers are going to support those types of situations as it relates to COVID. And hopefully we don't see those types of school closures, but just in case we do, they're here. So non-congregate meal service, parent guardian pickup, meal service time flexibility, and the service of meals at unanticipated at school sites during unanticipated school closures. So normally in unanticipated school closures, you are only allowed to operate sites at non-school sites. So this waiver would allow for these operations at school sites if school was to close due to the pandemic. There are also specific waivers for CACFP, same types of waivers, the non-congregate meal service, parent guardian pickup, meal service time. There's also the on-site monitoring requirement. So it does waive the on-site monitoring requirements and allows for monitoring through off-site means. If the situation was a closure in school, then it could affect your CACFP program as well. But for the most part, as long as school's opening, none of these waivers will be utilized in any of the programs. So there is a question about whether or not unanticipated school closures apply to when there are hurricanes. If there are a hurricane in a specific area, what we usually do on the state level is we ask for specific waivers for a certain area to support those types of operations. So should we see any kind of hurricane, which we are praying that is not something we'll see this year, then we would ask USDA for basically the same suite of waivers, but specific for the hurricane. What we saw last year is that those nationwide waivers were something they opened up and allowed for use in those types of situations. So there's the potential that since we already have that waiver, when we would go to USDA for a true declared emergency with a hurricane, that they would allow us the flexibility to use those waivers during that situation as well. Additional flexibilities for school year 22-23. The first is the local wellness policy triennial assessment. So the assessment was due for those of you that were required to do the assessment. It was due by June 30th, 2022. If you asked for an extension from that deadline, then you should have submitted that through our Google form, and that would change the deadline from June 30th, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. The food service management company contract. So this allows SFAs and sponsors to extend their FSMC contract if it was not otherwise eligible for extension, and that can be done through June 30th, 2023. The administrative review requirements, just as we saw the last couple of years, this waiver allows for the exclusion of the on-site monitoring piece. So this allows the state agency to perform monitoring off-site. We really hope that we will be back on site. We had hoped that we were going to be back on site last year and then saw that changed, but we do intend to start reviews this next year on site. We don't anticipate needing this right in the beginning. If you've completed your assessment for the wellness policy, hold on to that. You'll need that as part of your review, but there is not anywhere to submit that to us at the state agency. Just hold on to that, and you'll need that when the administrative review comes around. The additional flexibilities, paid lunch equity. So this waives the requirement for paid lunch equity for school year 22-23. And this pertains to all school lunches for school year 22-23. So that paid lunch equity tool uses data from previous years. It's very complicated when you don't have a great data set from previous years due to participation in summer feeding or seamless summer. So that requirement has been waived. Additionally, the carryover eligibility, I did put this one in bold because I think this is very, very important, and I want to make sure that you're not missing this. So this allows schools that operated seamless summer in school year 21-22 to use the most recent free and reduced price determinations, and that can be any point since school year 19-20. So during this first 30-day carryover of school year 22-23, any status back to school year 19-20 can be utilized. And that's because there are probably many families who did not submit applications in school year 21-22. And so if we can go back and use some of that other data as far back as 19-20, when it was pre-pandemic, then hopefully some of these families will still qualify for free or reduce in that first 30 days. There's also some flexibility with severe need, reimbursement, and also the 2-cent differential, which is what the 60% or greater that I showed you on the reimbursement. So that memo is available as well. And that really provides flexibility for the state agency on how they determine the severe need eligibility and the 2-cent differential. The other nationwide waiver, this is really the only nationwide waiver that affects national school lunch as we move into school year 22-23. So we saw a bunch of waivers that came in kind of late in the summer, really in July, related to summer feeding and seamless summer. So far, what we're expecting for the school year is really business as usual. So there are some flexibilities just in case. And then there is also this flexibility here that allows for flexibility with fiscal action when there are meal pattern violations related to supply chain disruptions during school year 22-23. So this applies to school year 22-23 for national school lunch, school breakfast, and even seamless summer. And it's only to be used in situations where there's a true supply chain disruption and the meal pattern would not be able to be met. And this would allow the state agency upon review to not assess fiscal action in those types of situations. The transitional standards on milk, whole grain, and sodium. I know we've mentioned this a few times, but I think it's important to remind us because now is the time that we're starting school. So this is when we're probably really starting to think about the meal pattern and how this will affect our menus. So we did start talking about this back in February or March, and that's when the traditional standards were published. And this rule kind of provides guidance over the next 2 school years, but then we do expect to see some permanent standards released during that time. These standards went into effect on July 1. This included seamless summer. So those of you that were in seamless summer had already transitioned to this. But since many of us are moving into the school year, it's really important that now we understand what those transitional standards mean. The first one is the flavored milk. So this allows SFAs to offer flavored low-fat milk at lunch and breakfast, and also to be sold as a la carte sales. It also requires that unflavored milk, either fat-free or low-fat, be one of the available choices at meal service. So we now can have that, in addition to the fat-free flavored milk, you can have now 1% flavored milk, which was available years ago. And then also you cannot have just 2 flavored milk choices available. You would have to have at least 1 unflavored milk choice, and that can be either low-fat or fat-free, but one of them has to be unflavored. And this flexibility for milk will also carry into the special milk program and also CACFP. And for CACFP, it's going to be children 6 years and older. So the younger children that were not allowed to have flavored milk are still not going to be allowed flavored milk within this flexibility in CACFP. This rule also clarifies some of the requirements around lactose-free and reduced lactose milk as well. The second requirement is whole grains. So this requires at least 80% of the weekly grains in the National School Lunch and School Breakfast program to be whole grain rich. The remaining 20% can be enriched. So this is an increase from last year. So what we saw before COVID even was we were at that 50% or greater. There was a waiver for, when you wanted to utilize some of those non-whole grain products. We are now going to 80% whole grain. So the majority of the items that you offer will be whole grain rich. Whole grain rich products are those that have at least 50% whole grains, and then the remaining grains, if any, are enriched grains. The third provision is related to sodium. So for both lunch and breakfast in school year 22-23, we retain those sodium target 1. So not really any change as we move into this school year, but for next school year, so 23-24, we will continue to retain that sodium 1 target for breakfast, but we will have a new sodium interim target 1A for national school lunch in school year 23-24. Medicaid demonstration. So just a reminder that we are about to start matching in Medicaid. So it'll be any day now as we start to have that file released. So we have some last minute changes that we're trying to get with the file type so that we can make those available. You have already received your match for SNAP and TANF, and we expect Medicaid to be not far behind. With the Medicaid matching, there will be 2 files. So you will receive a file for Medicaid free and a separate file for Medicaid reduced. That would be the main thing that separates this from the SNAP file. So we now will qualify students direct certification through reduced with Medicaid data as well as free. Our process for Medicaid matching is exactly the same as SNAP and TANF, so we do not expect any major disruption in our processes. I have linked the direct match training for end users if you want to refer to that. As I mentioned, the files will be 2 separate matching files, so we will have one for Medicaid free and one for Medicaid reduced. We expect that the file formats will be exactly the same. So the DM index and 3.0 file format, it is August 2nd. So we expect that this will be available very, very soon. So our goal is for early August, which is pretty much right now. So it'll be real soon before we release those. And then we have not had any negative feedback from food service vendors. They expect this transition, being that the file types are the same, that it is a very simple addition to the systems to pull that information in. So since we will be doing something a little different now, and with the Medicaid data, we're also going to certify children for direct certification for reduced meals. it is possible that families that qualify for reduced through Medicaid may really qualify for free had they completed a meal application. So it is a requirement that we notify households that received that benefit, that reduced benefit of the income guidelines, and encourage them to complete a meal application should they feel that their income qualifies them for free meals. With SNAP, we have the ability to get case numbers on an application and use that information to qualify a child for free meals. That is not the case with Medicaid. So there is the reason why there is no place on the application to record the Medicaid number is because them recording that Medicaid number doesn't do anything for us. And the main reason for that is because there are many different levels of Medicaid. And so, we are not trained to know what that income level is that qualifies for a family for a certain level of Medicaid. So it is only through direct matching that data can be used to qualify children. So applications, case numbers, none of that can be used to qualify a child for reduced or free meals through Medicaid. It can only be if the child is directly certified. As we mentioned earlier, that we have to notify our families who are reduced price that they can complete an application and potentially be eligible for free meals. If a child is determined reduced through Medicaid and they qualify for free in any other way, so whether it be SNAP, TANF, homeless, runaway, or they are filled out a meal application that qualified them for free, that free status should always supersede the Medicaid reduced status, even if it is through an application. eScholar updates and CEP Manager. So our June files are available. These are the first files of the 22-23 school year. I know it kind of throws us off because we call it June and the school year starts in July, but that information is as of June 30th. And so we get it in July, and that is our first file of the 22-23 school year. So you've already received that. The SNAP and TANF file has been made available, and I would expect very soon that we'll see the Medicaid files be available as well. So your DC list should be already available. If you go into eScholar, that first June file is already available. So you should be able to pull that, for any, if you're trying to pass out meal applications to families that are not DC, then, you should have that DC list in eScholar already. That data was loaded for June, which is the first file. So you should be able to pull that. CEP Manager, I feel like I've just finished harassing everybody by June 30th to submit the population data, but now you need to also submit the elections. So we did population first by June 30th, and elections have to be made by September 30th, 2022. That is also done in eScholar. So their first tab was population data. The second tab is CEP elections. Please get those in. I know the deadline is September 30th, but with the start of school, it is to your best interest that you make a decision regarding CEP before school starts so that you're not changing the process. So if you could please get those submissions in as soon as possible before school starts, but absolutely no later than September 30th. If for some reason that does not get in by that date, you will not be eligible to operate CEP in school year 22-23. So do make sure that those elections are in. Training updates. So we do have our registration open for all of our August trainings. We also included our next monthly call, which will be on Tuesday, September 6th. So I feel like we're just starting August. So I shouldn't even mention September, but that's the next monthly call. We also have numerous trainings in August. So August 11th, we have HACCP and wellness policies at 1 o'clock. August 16th is procurement plan and code of conduct at 1 o'clock. Thursday, August 18th is Accommodating Children with Disability and Child Nutrition Programs at 1 o'clock. Tuesday, August 23rd, School Breakfast Meal Pattern and Offer versus Serve at 1 o'clock. Thursday, August 25th is the School Lunch Meal Pattern and OVS at 1 p.m. And then Tuesday, August 30th is CEP, the Submitting the Elections at 1 p.m. All of the agendas and Zoom links are posted on Louisiana Fit Kids. We also post the slides and recorded videos when they are available to Louisiana Fit Kids. There are instances where the trainings are accidentally not recorded, and so they may not be available. But for the most part, we do try to record and make available all of the trainings. So what we've added now is office hours. So that is what we're going to do is we're going to have them the day after the monthly call. So today is the monthly call. So tomorrow at 1 o'clock, we'll begin our August office hours. This is meant to be an opportunity for you to speak. So during the monthly call, we just throw a bunch of information at you. You are welcome to still ask questions in the chat box, but the office hours will give you an opportunity to ask questions. There will be no agenda. There's no major plan. If anybody attended the CEP office hours that we did, it's just an opportunity to get your questions answered in a setting that hopefully will be beneficial to all. There will be a memo going out today to let you know of this. It will start tomorrow at 1 o'clock. If you go to Louisiana Fit Kids, you'll see that on the calendar. If you click on that, that box on the calendar, there's a link in there. It says click on the green link to go to the Zoom link. And so if you click on that, you'll go to the location of the Zoom for office hours. That's going to be tomorrow. Like I said, there is no agenda, so it looks a little bit different on Louisiana Fit Kids because of that. There is no agenda. There's not. It's really just an opportunity for you to come ask whatever questions, any questions that are just you need to get out quickly, or just are curious about what others are asking. You feel free to come listen, but we'll be on tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Another reminder of our in-person obesity conference. So this is going to be on Thursday, September 29th at Pennington. We're also planning a state update for the afternoon of Wednesday, September 28th. We also have the farm to school meeting that is going to be that day as well. So it's going to be a fun 2 days in Baton Rouge. So hopefully we will see the majority of you here and you will come hang out with us, and it will feel like it's 2 years. I don't even know what anybody looks like anymore. So please, I know we're all looking forward to seeing everybody in person again. So we hope to see all of you. Other reminders, just once again, I want to remind everybody about the procurement requirements. So the governor's proclamation that suspended the public bid law, that did expire back in March. So we are well past March, but I think that as we're starting school, I think we need to be reminded that we need to be following procurement standards. So it is absolutely still required, and there is no flexibility. So do make sure that you're following those state procurement laws and regulations. There's no more waiver of that public bid law. There are still some exceptions regarding state law for procurement of local agricultural products to support farm to school. So there are some flexibilities that still exist there outside of COVID. The deadline for charter schools to submit their food service management company contract or agreement amendment was June 1st, 2022. Now we are now 2 months past June 1st, but being the school year started July 1, but really schools don't really start until August. Most of you are gearing up right now. Those contracts have to be approved by the state agency before you can start utilizing them. So you will not receive reimbursement for meals that are served at the start of the school if there's not a approved food service management company contract or agreement amendment. And the civil rights update, this is just a reminder as well. I find that I like to include this because as the last couple of weeks, I find that there's been a lot of questions and very interesting articles that have referred to this change in addition of gender identity and sexual orientation in the non-discrimination statement. We have not received any of the new Injustice for All posters, but once we do, we'll let you know. It's always been prohibited to separate by gender in the meal service. I know some of our schools still try to do that, so I've linked the memo here. You need to refer to that. But the biggest takeaway, I think, is that we feed kids. And so as long as we continue to feed kids, we don't have, our programs don't impact other operations within the school, other decisions that need to be made. We feed kids. So as long as we focus on our goals of what we are to do within our regulations, which is to feed kids, then there should not be any concerns among among these policies. The non-discrimination statement should be updated on websites, documents, any other printed materials. Until the new poster is received, you can keep the old one up. It's fine, not a problem, but we need to replace to the new language once it's made available. Coming soon, we have more supply chain assistance funds. So I know you're super duper excited about that. So we received about 16 million last time, and we received about 15 million this time. So we will be allocating those out in the same way that we did the last time. So we're using that base payment of $5,000 per sponsor, and then the remainder of the funds will be distributed among SFAs based on their enrollment. So bigger schools or school systems will receive more funds. Smaller schools or school systems will receive a smaller amount of money. If you already completed an attestation statement the first time around, you don't have to complete one again. So you probably haven't heard much from us regarding this, as we're waiting for for the money to be distributed to us, for us to allocate out. But that original attestation statement that said that you wanted to accept the funds will cover this allocation as well. So this is just a second allocation of that supply chain funds. And so you can probably expect a similar amount to what you received last year, but it will definitely be less because we did receive less money this year, but fairly close. The equipment grant, so it's coming soon as well. So we did get our award for the 2022 equipment grant, so about $521,000. We will competitively award those in the process that we've always used. So we'll send that to you, that information to you as soon as it is available, but that process will remain the same as it has been in prior years. As we keep getting these equipment grants, there are schools that are being awarded, and those schools then become ineligible for the next equipment grant. So don't ever think that you don't have a shot, because as we go further and further down the list of SFAs, schools that have not received it are going to be less and less. So there's a greater chance that you'll be able to receive some of these funds. So please make sure you're submitting your application once we put out that application, because everybody who has not already received a grant has a chance to receive funds. We did post our updated free and reduced price forms on the website. There are no major changes. So we changed the school year, we updated the non-discrimination statement on the forms, and we added that new eligibility determination letter for Medicaid. But everything else should look pretty similar to what it was in previous years. Just as a reminder, there is no universal free meals for school year 22-23. USDA has not, and nor do we expect that they will make any announcements to extend free meals to all in school years 22-23. So it is very important that school systems are making a plan for either election of CEP or that they are getting families to complete free and reduced price applications so that we can start getting children qualifying for free and reduced price meals. Start communicating this as quickly as possible, then so that you can get kids in for these meals. I would communicate the message early and often. 2 years of all free, families are going to just think that's what we're still doing. So we have to continue to remind them that this process has changed, that it's going back to what it was pre-pandemic, and that these applications will need to be completed. Our school nutrition program spotlight for August is Miss Catherine Young. So she works for the Zachary Community School District. And we are celebrating her this month. She's a manager, and she's been in the business for 24 years of food service, and she's been the manager at Zachary High for the last 2 years. And her hard work and dedication shines every day, and she's very passionate about her job, and we want to express our gratitude and thanks to her for her efforts and commitment to our kids. If you have someone that you would like to have highlighted here, you have a manager, a director, a technician, someone that you feel should be highlighted here, please send that information to Kathy Carmichael. Her phone number and email address is listed on this slide. We would like to continue even now after summer into the school year, continuing to highlight a food service employee who's doing a great job for our kids. So please continue to send in those nominations. Okay, I'm now going to open it up to questions. I think I've answered a lot of them as we were going. I do have one question that has come in regarding equipment grant. So the question is whether or not if the school just did not receive an equipment grant in the prior year, is that what prevents them from being eligible, or is it at any point that they've received a equipment grant? So the way it's written is at any point since the beginning of this equipment grant, then they are not eligible. So we are continuing to go down the list. At some point, I guess, when we no longer have school systems that have never received a grant, there may be a change in those requirements. But right now, it is if you've ever received one, you're not eligible. The administrative review schedule. So the school systems that are going to be reviewed, that information I think is already posted. I'm looking. It may not be. I'll double check to make sure. It's posted. So it'll be on our website. We don't have dates yet. What we have is just who's going to be reviewed. This is really and truly most of the area is going to be kind of the New Orleans area. Just based on our schedule, that's the area that's going to be the bulk of who we review this year. There are some kind of little other parishes that are near the New Orleans area that will qualify, but the big city where these review, the center of where all these reviews are going to be is probably going to be the New Orleans area. So if you haven't been reviewed yet in this cycle, so if you were not reviewed the year that COVID hit in March and you were not reviewed last year, I guarantee that you are being reviewed this year. So if you were not reviewed during COVID or right before COVID, then you are going to be up for review this year. There's a question about the waivers. So previously we required that you opt in or out to all of the waivers. Because these new waivers are meant to really be in like for short term, you only need to complete them if you want to opt in. So the assumption is going to be that you're not opting in unless you need them. So there's no need to fill out or opt out of the short-term waivers. We will go under the assumption that you're not using them unless you tell us you're using them. And the main reason around that is that there are very strict requirements on what we would consider for approval. And so the majority of sponsors are not operating the short-term waivers unless they ask for it. And there's a situation that truly warrants the use of that waiver. Any other questions? I think I answered most of them as we went. I hope that some of you will come tomorrow to the office hours. Once again, you'll have a chance to talk, so you'll be able to unmute yourself and ask questions. And then we'll go from there. The registration for the obesity conference will be open next week, so look for that. We'll also send a memo once it's available, and we'll have that as well as the state update available for registration next week. So look for that through a memo, and then it'll be available on Louisiana Fit Kids. Any other questions? A question about the maximum reimbursement rate. So I joked earlier with one of my coworkers to tell them that it's only the SFAs that we like that we give the maximum reimbursement to. But in honesty, the way the maximum reimbursement rate works is if we were to give anybody the maximum reimbursement rate, we would have to take away that amount of money from other SFAs in the state. So we would have to start sharing the reimbursement to give some higher and some lower than what is listed on that chart. So that is not something that we have ever done, nor do we plan on doing. The reimbursement rates we will not use that maximum reimbursement rate because it does impact some positively, but many others negatively. So that is not something that we will use. The 60% plus the 8 cents, so the 2 cent differential is what we call it, is the 60% or greater. The 6 cent certification, which is the menu certification, is now 8 cents. So we've gone from 6 to 7 and now at 8. So you will all either receive the less than 60% plus the 8 cents or the more than 60% plus 8 cents. But nobody receives the maximum reimbursement. Any other questions? All right, I think I'm right on time. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out. And so the 60% or greater, it's going to be, it's the second preceding year. So yes, it will be pre-COVID because that is 1920 is where the date is coming from. All right, if you want to look at like your last year's claim, it can kind of give you an idea of if you're 60% or more or 60% or less. Most school systems, if you operated CEP, you're 60% or more because that percentage, once you add that multiplier, would put you in 60% or more, free or reduced. So if you've operated CEP, then in the second preceding year, then you would qualify for the 60% or more. The Schedule A is the percent for the the free and reduced percent. So on the Schedule A, there's a separate tab that says severe need, and that is the eligibility for severe need, which is done on the site level. So you can look at that. We do automatically pre-fill that information through the data that we have available in our system. So you do not need to complete that. That is done on our end. But severe need is allocated on a site level, and then the 2-cent differential is on the entire sponsor level. So those percentages for severe need are on the site level of the Schedule A. All right. Okay. If there are no more questions, then we will end for today. If you come up with some more questions, please let us know. We'll be happy to help. And I hope you have a good day, a good week, and also a good start of the school year. And if you need something, you can let us know.